This build will make it super easy to farm all the solo dungeons that this game has to offer. Solo dungeons are the best silver farm early on, so when you're on your first grind to premium, this build is a godsend. Your weapon is the nature staff. The charm of this build is that you are constantly healing and regenerating energy while you use your secondary items for AoE damage. Your chest piece is Stalker's jacket for the crazy AoE damage that it has with electric field, but the HELLION jacket with lifesteal aura is even better, if you can afford the extra 40k silver that is, which is kind of a lot. Your headpiece can either be the cultist COWL or even better, the COWL of Purity for the cool eye laser thingy ability that it has, but it also works as an interrupt, which is also another good thing. Mathematically speaking, if you get the cultist COWL, you will save a few seconds because you kill the bosses a lot faster, but honestly, in my opinion, it is a waste of money. Your offhand weapon can very well be just a regular torch, which is very cheap, or a mist color is even better if you can afford it. Any cooldown reduction that you can get from this is vital because you have zero energy problems with this build, so the more spells that you can spam, the better. Finally, your boots are either soldier or guardian boots because they are the cheapest that exist with rejuvenating sprint on them, but here's a list of cooler leather options if you wanna just flex a little, I don't know. Okay, so that's your build, but how do you play it? You take Thorn Growth as your Q for damage, Rejuvenate as your W for healing and more energy, and you have your E for both AoE damage and a little bit of extra healing. The way you approach a dungeon is you pull about 4 mobs, sometimes more depending on your gear, and you drop thorns on them until you get 4 stacks on them. After they stand about 2 seconds on your thorns, they get all the stacks, and that way you can pop your E, and it's gonna do a lot of AoE damage. Remember, when you drop your Q, you have 3 seconds to drop another Q 2 times in a row, so that way when the mobs are moving on where they are spread out, you can just drop a bunch of them, and that way you can make sure that everybody's stacking at the same time. You also pop your D and then your R for extra damage. That's your additional items, your chest piece and your helmet, and if you don't have to dodge any skill shots, you can W and heal through whatever damage you take. Some people choose an aggressive W for faster clearing, and if you have a lot of gear, if you have very high tier gear, that is a good idea, but right here this is super broken because you can simply tank through every unavoidable damage. There's a lot of avoidable damage in dungeons, but there's also a lot of unavoidable damage, auto attacks and stuff, and if you are able to survive through it with crappy gear, you can clear pretty much anything. Remember, your R and your D are on a long cooldown, so you're not gonna have them on every single pool. That's fine. There is no shame in making smaller pools until you get them back up for a bigger pool. If you farm them long enough, you're gonna get a feel of how many you can handle before you die. Keep in mind, dying is a much worse bump to your efficiency than slowing down a little by far, so never get greedy. And that's not even to mention, you know, repair bills. Who's gonna pay for that? Well, you. As you get more confident, you can pull even more mobs, especially after you get better gear, but for now, even playing slow with this is the best build you can get for gear this cheap. This tier 4 kit is only worth 50k and it will carry you all the way to tier 7 solo dungeons with no problem and very little risk. You can also get a mist color for an extra about 5k, and that's even better, but the torch is worth almost nothing and it is still fine. If you have spare silver and wanna farm faster, or maybe you wanna do tier 8, this 4.2 set will only cost 135k and it is fully capable of tier 8. After you get some silver in your pocket, it might be worth it to swap to the 4.2 anyway, because it will allow you to farm much faster. Maybe even swap your W for Bramble Seed because you're gonna do more damage and you don't need that much healing anymore. This is footage of me clearing an entire tier 8 dungeon with nothing but this set, and I am doing this with 200 latency, so you cannot say that I am only doing it because I got insane pro gamer skills, okay? The best food for this is the Avalonian beef stew, but it is ridiculously expensive, so you can get the pork omelette instead. For potions, you can use poison potions to clear faster, you don't really need them. That is not it, this build is also pretty competent in 2v2 Hellgates. You just duo with a solid melee DPS or perhaps a crossbowman and you become extremely annoying to kill. Ideally you wanna change it a little bit. maybe a HELLION jacket and a druidic staff or an iron root staff is gonna be better, but out of the box you can do some pretty nasty moves. Great nature staff with this build is also decent for corrupted dungeons, but you are very matchup reliant. You see, the strategy in 1v1 is to stall and heal yourself until the opponent runs out of gas, but some builds just have too much damage for you to heal through it. Speaking of PvP, you wanna do your dungeons in the black zone, even accounting for the risk of getting ganked and losing all your loot, it is still too good to pass up. Doing almost any activity in the black zone will yield much bigger rewards. In Albion Online, losing money is almost as big of a part of the game as making money, and there is a lot of ways to prevent dying with this build that you should know. The main takeaway is never get greedy. Just like in the stock market, you gotta learn to quit when you're ahead. If you get a big loot when you're at the end of the dungeon, just run back home. Do not keep farming anymore. Your best bet is to do dungeon maps and wait the 90 seconds after you zone it, and that way nobody can enter after you and nobody can invade you. Dungeon maps are better loot anyway. If you pop the dungeon map in your city portal, it is guaranteed to spawn on a zone right next to it. You can then easily use the invisibility shrine to go to it before any ganker finds you. Get at least a tier 3 riding horse, and that way you're gonna be very hard to gank. They made it very hard to dismount people in latest patches, so you should be pretty safe, given that your trip home and back is pretty small. By the way, tier 8 dungeons are the best way to get fame, and while you can clear them in starter gear, they are not the best silver per hour. You see, the dungeon maps for tier 8 are massively overpriced right now, sometimes going as high as 50k I've seen. So you do not even break even half the time when you get all the loot, and when you take into account that they are slower to clear anyway, better alternatives show up. You see, for whatever reason, tier 6 maps are really cheap right now. They are 5k a pop, that is even cheaper than tier 5. You can also clear them super fast and the loot is not that much worse. Besides, as a new player you cannot even join tier 8 right away. You gotta get your river level. I ran the numbers because I farmed both extensively during my first premium grind, and without premium, aka 50% slower, tier 8 is about 200k profit every hour, while tier 6 is about 500k an hour. So ideally you would only take you about 20 hours of grinding to get your premium. Keep in mind, dungeon loot is very random, so a 10-hour sample may not be enough for accurate numbers, but overall it is a huge difference. Also keep in mind that better gear will drastically increase your silver per hour because you're doing more damage, but at the added risk of losing it to ganks, which is pretty common because the more gear you have, the more tempting you are, and in this build I gotta admit you're a little bit of a sitting duck. Having that said, solo dungeons are in my opinion the best money farm for a new player, and I do not see it changing anytime soon. So if you like this video, please leave a comment and subscribe and join our Discord and behave, homeboys.